And thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and it's a privilege to serve on this committee under your leadership.
Best committee in Congress.
Yes.
Don't forget that.
Yeah, well, it's been very interesting here today. I'll tell you this. Mr. Pugh, first, I want to thank you for your service, for your work with the Army Cyber Institute. The Army Cyber Command Center is located in the 12th District of Georgia, my district. And it's good to see how expertise can be shared across the public and private sectors for data security purposes. We're not engaged in cybersecurity warfare here, but how do you see passing a national data privacy framework providing for more cooperation among allied countries against current and political adversaries? How do you see that framework?
Well, thank you, Congressman, and thrilled to see the Army represented in Georgia. I've spent a lot of time at Fort Benning, so appreciate that. And to your point, I think the biggest issue now, Congressman, is we don't have a privacy law here, so it's forcing American companies to follow other frameworks around the really, like GDPR in the European Union, that's just not as friendly to businesses. So I think this is really a key opportunity for us to develop a framework, and hopefully others follow what we view as the American vision. And I think the critical aspect of it is there's several provisions that promote security. Just to flag one of them is the notice if a consumer's data goes to China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia. Right now, data can flow there, and the average consumer is totally unaware of it, and that's just a deep concern.
Well, obviously, that's our property, and we have the right to protect it, and we certainly need to do something about this. Ms. Sachs, you've done a lot of work with security-focused think tanks. Again, you know, of course, we passed the CHIPS Act, which, you know, I think totaled over $252 billion. And now it looks like we've got a glutton of chips or semiconductors in the country. Is your think tank looked at, you know, what happens when the government pours money into something and then you know, it creates market problems, market issues as far as supply and demand?
Well, I can speak from a personal capacity rather than my organization's.
Okay.
I have not looked at that specific issue. I mean, I think you raise an important question, which is when governments pick winners and losers, we have to be very smart about how those resources are allocated. And particularly because we don't want to mirror China as a nation focused on industrial policy. So how do we use state funding and facilitate productive partnerships between the private sector and public institutions to understand how do we allocate those resources to avoid exactly those issues that you've discussed?
And we don't seem to look down the road at the implications of this as far as the free market. And Mr. Farah, the first thing is, how much do these vehicles cost? I mean, what's the price range?
Congressman, currently as so-called level 4 autonomy is being deployed out into the United States, they are not currently available for private ownership, and so you have companies that are operating their own fleets of AVs. They're doing things such as robo-taxis and with the passenger cars, unmanned delivery pods that are delivering groceries and whatnot, AV trucks that I mentioned. And so while private ownership may be in the future, that's not where we are currently.
So we haven't gotten a market base on the price of manufacturing those vehicles? Okay.
That is correct.
You're an innovator. Obviously, this is a great. This is going to be a great tool for the American people. What's the best driver of innovation in this country? Is it free market or government?
Sir, what I can speak to is that our industry has led in terms of private capital investment into this industry. Certainly, this has been a private sector driven exercise in terms of deployment of AVs to this point. But it is important that policymakers shine a light on this industry because there's obviously a lot of work that needs to get done, both from a federal legislative perspective as well as at a regulatory perspective.
Right.
So it truly is a partnership, and we need your help.
Well, Ms. Sack, I think you hit the nail on the head where how does the government do this? Because they're picking winners and losers, and it affects all the markets. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I appreciate that very much.